Hey guys, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
All right, I see 44 people, so I don't expect more people usually in the evening hours. So let us start with our class. Okay, so since the beginning, we learned so many things. So I taught you HTML, CSS, JavaScript, followed by TypeScript, Webpack. So we have seen what Angular is. How does Angular internally include something about your Webpack, TypeScript, and so many things, right? So all these things, whatever you are trying to achieve, we are mostly trying to do it in the browser, right? So, so browser as well as client has some sort of limitations. Okay, so those limitations are like accessing the data only which is available to the particular browser, which you get from third-party service. That is from somewhere else, right? That means your client cannot directly talk with a database, any sort of database. For example, consider your MongoDB, sorry, not MongoDB, consider MySQL, okay, or else you can consider Postgres databases, okay. So can these databases directly interact with your browser? No, because in order to interact with the databases, you need something called as a driver, right? That is a middleware, a driver, which you need in order to talk with a particular database. All right. So those things are not available to you in the browser, so you cannot directly talk with the databases. So that's one use case what you cannot do from the browser. Okay, let us take it this way. Suppose if your browser can do it, will you still do it? Is it a right way to do it? I don't think so. See, this particular website, whatever you're accessing, okay, it is used across multiple places. That means if anybody can hack this particular, your website, so they can directly access your credentials of your database, and they can directly connect to your database, and they can, get all the data whatever you have stored in the database, right? So that is a serious security concern. So that is a reason they have put some limitations about the various implementations of how web works. Okay, that means on a client side, that means inside your browser, there are some strict guidelines for the web, for the browser developers like Google or Mozilla or Microsoft. Okay, so there are some strict guidelines about what needs to be done on the browser and what should be done on the browser. Okay, that means only the things which are designed as a part of the specifications of web development, okay, only those things will be developed by the browsers. So if the web development standards tells that your browser cannot interact or cannot interact with the system resources, that means that your browser will not give you such resources. Okay, so that is the reason why your client is only responsible for viewing the data, showing you the data, taking the input from the user, collecting it and processing it for some till some extent. You will also process it on the UI and send it back to your backend server, right? Backend server is nothing but, so backend server will internally interact with your database and save the data, correct? So this is a workflow usually which happens. Okay, all right, till now we have learned about how do you develop the websites on the client side. Okay, now let us see how do you make it a full a complete website. Okay, that means how do you actually take inputs from your particular website. Okay, how do you save it in your database. Okay, so what sort of service are server you have to create, or you have to open on a particular port. Okay, so that you listen to the request and you process the request and store the data somewhere. Okay, so today we will learn about something called as mean stack. So what exactly is mean stack, and why do you require this particular thing? Okay, so most of the scenarios in today's web applications, they do not require something called as a rigid or a very powerful backend server. Okay, for example, you are developing a banking website. Okay, you definitely require a powerful backend which can handle so many requests and which can do multi-threading and so many things. Okay, then people prefer something like your traditional backend languages like Java. Okay, but suppose you are developing a website which is used at max by like 10,000 people or 20,000 people per day. Okay, or assume like 100 people per hour or something like that. Okay, then do you actually have to implement it on a Java backend and use Postgres DB for that? Do you think so? I don't think so, because the way how things are implemented earlier to now have completely changed. That means your front end has got so many new features which are provided. Okay, so not exactly front end. Okay, the development standards have increased, and there are now more options for the user to choose based on his use case. That means if a developer is developing a banking website, he needs a very powerful backend server. Then he'll use something like Java or C, C++ or .NET or something like that. All right. So if at all he is developing a website for hostel management or something like that, who is supposedly going to use hostel management? At max the admins of the hostel, or else the warden, as well as your students who are staying in the hostel or who wants to go to the hostel, right? So that means, so not actually you require a solid or very powerful backend, right? That means your server can be a little bit less powerful also, it is okay for you, because number of requests are not so very high for your particular project, right? So in order to cater these sort of requirements, okay, in order to cater the requirements of the applications which are of not of type large scale applications, okay, people choose something called as mean stack. Okay, so as a part of the mean stack, you get to interact with your databases which are of JSON based data types. Okay, what is the JSON based database? So JSON based database is nothing but it's a collection, it's like an array of objects, okay, which is stored inside one particular object and saved inside a particular database collection reference. Okay, so we will go in detail about this thing. We'll talk about in detail with examples, like how do you interact with the database, how do you get the data and all these things. Okay, but once somebody says mean stack, so he supposedly, or he or she is supposedly talking about a JSON based database. Okay, and the interaction between this JSON based database can happen through multiple mediums. Okay, for example, using Java also, using your Java, C, C++, .NET, Python, anything, any programming language, you can still interact with your database, like your MongoDB or Firebase, Angular Firebase, or anything, any sort of JSON based database, you can directly interact with any programming language. Okay, but the only advantage you get with the mean stack is the people who are already used to front end development frameworks, like your Angular, your TypeScript, or your JavaScript, right? So you don't have to learn anything more. That means using your existing knowledge on your JavaScript, you can directly interact with those particular databases from your JavaScript code. Okay, the only difference now is this particular JavaScript code is not being run inside the browser. It will be run by a server. Okay, so JavaScript code will be run by a server, and that server is said to be your Node.js. Okay, so what is a Node.js? So Node.js is a server-side programming language which internally uses JavaScript as its programming language. Okay, so whatever you are going to write inside Node.js, it will be your JavaScript only. That means all the things whatever you have learned till now, like your variables, let, constant, or functions, or promises, ESX promises, arrow functions, and you have learned about so many things, object references, arrays, right, array methods, dot for each, and you have seen object dot keys to get the keys of an object, right? All these methods are still relevant as a part of your Node.js. Okay, so what is the advantage you are getting when you are doing in the mean stack? So you don't have to learn a new programming language like Java or Python or C, C++, .NET, or anything like this. Okay, so with the existing knowledge of your JavaScript, you can develop a server-side programming language. So yes, so when you say server-side programming language, what are the advantages you are getting? So usually, whenever you use JavaScript here on client side, that means inside your browser, you're able to do a number of things. But once you use a JavaScript on the server side, there must be some extra advantages and cons, right? So on the server side, obviously you don't have any HTML to view, correct? So that means there won't be any client part. That means you cannot interact with document. So that means you don't have anything related to document. You will write it as a part of your same, the coding. Inside your Node.js will not write anything about document, because server side is more about data processing, right? Collecting the data, storing it somewhere, or sending the data to some other point, processing the data, and applying some validations or something like that. Okay, implementing a login implementation in the backend, something like this, right? So server always deals with more about your model related logic. That means your data related logic, computing the data, storing the data, showing the data, sending the data, receiving the data, right? So server mostly deals with the data part. Okay, so here also in Node.js we will be concentrating about that only. That means using your server side programming language Node.js, we will try to make data related interactions with your website, whatever you have developed, using Angular or TypeScript or HTML. Okay, so what is a Node.js, guys? Node.js is nothing but it's a server-side programming language which internally uses JavaScript to compute, store, and do all sort of CRUD operations. I think everybody knows what a CRUD is, right? Create, read, update, and delete sort of operations of your data, right? So all these operations can be possible using your server-side programming language. So why exactly do you prefer Node.js on your server side? Okay, if your application is not a very large scale application, like banking application, or something like your Swiggy or Zomato or something like that, people ideally prefer something like MongoDB to complete their application. So MongoDB with Node.js to complete their application, because the number of requests what are being received by your particular server are not so heavy. Okay, so what is the loss if at all you implement something like Node.js? There is no loss, right? So that is the reason why people prefer something like Node.js whenever it is possible. Okay, so today we will talk about how do you kickstart your Node.js part. Okay, how do you install Node.js? How do you check if Node.js is installed or not? And how do you write a hello world program to print it in console? Okay, how do you ask Node.js to execute a JavaScript file and show you an output? So once that is done, we will see what are the various things you can do using your your Node.js with JavaScript, okay, inside the server. So we will see that. So once that is done, we'll only talk about each and everything on a higher level, guys. We'll not talk about all everything like in detail. Once I say about what all are possible in Node.js, we'll talk about the higher level things. But once those higher level things are done, we'll concentrate on those things which actually matter to you guys at this moment. Okay, after that, so today we'll be dealing about Node.js, what Node.js, and the setup and installation, how do you get it started, and other things. So once that is done, we'll look into the API documentation. What are the various things you can do using your Node.js. After that, we will start with your creating servers concept. Okay, how do you create a server? How do you interact with a server? Okay, how can your front end interact with your server? How can it give you a response back to your server? Okay, some basic concepts of these things we will discuss today. Okay, tomorrow let us try to learn about something called as a MongoDB. What is a MongoDB? Why do you require it? Okay, how do you interact with this MongoDB? Okay, so we'll talk about this tomorrow in the morning. All right, so yes, so let us start with today's class. Any doubts till now, guys? Any doubts? Any doubts, guys? All clear? Are you able?
No, sir.
Yes, Satvik, are you telling something?
It's clear.
Yes. All right. Others, what about you, Madan, Sairam, Akhil, and I see many people today here with name Sai.
Clear, sir. Yes, sir.
All right then. All right. Okay. So yes, guys. So as I was telling, okay. So this is about Node.js. Let me share my screen. Please confirm if you can see it. So can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So what is the site you are seeing? I think we have already seen this site earlier. Can anybody explain? Can anybody guess or inform? Like when did you see this website Node.js? Why did we have to go through this website?
So to install to run JavaScript files
That's okay.
NPM,
But
and for npm,
NPM,
sir.
sir.
npm.
Or
NPM.
TypeScript, sir.
Yes, yes. So for TypeScript and NPM, we have used something like this Node.js, right? We had to install this so that we can create NPM packages and install third-party packages as a part of your front-end development, correct? So similarly, okay, so Node.js, as I was telling you, it is a server-side programming languages, what you can use, okay? So for your respective operating system, once you come to this page, it will show you something like this. For example, if you have Windows, it will say download for Windows. So once the setup is done, for my system, the setup is done. Okay, I think everybody has done the setup part for Node.js. How do you know? What is the version you have installed? Go to your terminal or your command prompt. Say node-v. It will give you the version which is installed. So I am having the latest version 12.16.3 LTS. LTS stands for long time support. So usually people prefer LTS versions because you'll have long term support for those versions. That means if there are any security bugs or something like that, they will keep on supporting you guys for so long. I mean, for a long period of time. That is the reason people use LTS. Okay, so now this is how you install your Node.js. Okay, once installed, you should go to your console, your terminal or command prompt and type something like node space -v. So it will give you the output version. If you are able to see this version, that means your Node.js is installed successfully inside your system. All right. So now let us, quickly create a hello world, Node.js file, server side file, and run the JavaScript file to see what will be the output and how do you execute that particular file inside your using your Node.js. Okay. So I'll again use WebStorm only, guys. You can use VS Code. It's up to you guys. I'm using WebStorm for my project. Okay. Give me a minute, guys. The WebStorm is loaded. Till the WebStorm is loaded.
So your voice is not audible.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
All right. So can you see the screen with the new
Sir, your voice is not clear. It's breaking.